Welcome to everyone. My name is Franscesca Magli. I'm Assistant Professor of Business Administration in University of Milano Bicocca. And in this lesson, we are going to talk about governance and corporate governance, analyzing in particular the main characteristics and peculiarities. Let's start with the definition of governance. For governance, we mean the policies and the continuous monitoring of their implementation by members of the governing bodies of an organization. So it includes the mechanisms required to balance the members' powers and their primary duty of enhancing the prosperity and profitability of the organization. The term governance comes from the word govern, which means to manage and control the action of a group for the benefit of the whole. Governance can be defined as the actions and means adopted by a society to promote collective action and deliver collective solutions in pursuit of common objectives. So in order to reach these goals, such organization requires agreement on, for example, obligations and responsibilities of members, the making of decision process, dispute settlement, and formal or informal rules and procedures concerning all of these. Governance, however, is not synonymous with government. What is governance? Governance may be officialized within a set of rules and procedures, regular or irregular meeting of relevant parties, or a permanent organizational structure with appropriate decision-making and implementing bodies. But governance, in other cases, may rely on informal mechanisms, for example, common law, cultural norms and values, that are not formalized into explicit rules. What is government? Government, instead, is a particular and highly formalized form of governance. Government, in fact, suggests activities that are supported by formal authority, whereas governance refers to activities backed by shared goals that may or may not derive from legal and formally prescribed responsibilities. The concept of governance has evolved over time, so this evolution is due to social and environmental changes, new institution processes, and organization development in civil societies such as public governance, clinical governance, corporate governance, and so on. In the business world, we can talk about corporate governance, and usually this refers to policies that specifically restrict or direct how people inside of the company can act. Corporate governance is the system of rules, practices and processes by which a company is directed and controlled. So it's the framework of rules and practices by which governance bodies ensure accountability, fairness and transparency in a company's relationship with its all stakeholders. We will see later that these are key points for the pursuit of good governance. Corporate governance essentially involves balancing the interests of companies' many stakeholders, such as shareholders, management, customers, suppliers, financiers, government, and the community. The corporate governance framework consists of different tools. There are the rules, which can be national and international laws regarding legal and regulatory system. Other laws, including accounting laws, commercial laws, and so on, and company laws, laws and rules, such as rules and contracts between the company and the stakeholders for distribution of responsibilities, rights, and rewards. There are also procedures and bodies, for example, for reconciling the sometimes conflict of interest of stakeholders in accordance with their duties, privileges and roles, and then procedures for proper supervision, control and information flows to serve as a system of checks and balances. In this other part, we are going to talk about the key actors of the corporate governance. Within the companies, there are several actors that are relevant to corporate governance. We can talk in general about stakeholders or in particular of shareholders, directors, managers. Who is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is defined as any person who is bearers of interest in the enterprise, so the term includes all the previous key actors. Another important definition says any person, group, which can affect or be affected by the actions of a business. It includes employees, customers, suppliers, creditors, and even the wider community and competitors. The first important stakeholder for the company is the shareholder. A shareholder is any person, company, or institution that owns at least one share of a company's stock. The board should act in a way that is most likely to promote the success of the company for the benefit of its members, shareholders as a whole. So, shareholder can have a direct power in a company, in particular in the middle and small companies, but often, for example, in large companies, don't have direct power over the operation of a company. In these companies, the power of shareholders arises from their capability to appoint, dismiss, and influence the decision-making of the board of directors. Such powers are defined both by national legislation and company law, for example, the statute. The group of shareholders often is not an homogeneous group. There may be a variety of competing or conflicting objectives. This happens especially in family farms, in family businesses, where some actively involved in company management and others are not. Another important stakeholder for the company is the director. In small and medium enterprises, usually there is one only director that is often an owner director. In some cases, there is a board of directors. In larger listed companies, instead, there is a board of directors, which is primarily responsible for enhancing the company's value and protecting its corporate interests. Board often include insider and independent members. Insider are major shareholders, founders, and executive. There is usually executive and non-executive director, and we talk about these figures after. And then there is the independent directors. The independent directors do not share the ties of the insiders, but they are chosen because of their experience managing or directing other large companies. Independent directors are considered helpful for governance because they dilute the concentration of power and help align shareholder interests with those of the insider director. Executive and non-executive director. An executive director is a member of the board of directors of a company who is also an employee of that company and who often has a specified area of responsibility such as finance, production, and so on. The second, so the non-executive director, is a member of the board of directors who does not form part of the executive management team. In charge of the management process, there are the managers. Managers are hired as the agent of the shareholders to run the company for their benefit, and therefore they are legally and morally forced to serve their interests. Management refers to the actions taken by a company to lead the business in a positive direction, so towards an high performance. Corporations usually have management teams once the company becomes too big for the founder. So management team members include titles such as department head, director, chief executive officer, chief operating officer, chief financial officer, and so on. The corporate governance framework is a set of key concepts that allow us to create good governance. The framework of corporate governance involves the linkage of the key corporate governance sectors with principles of good governance. The most important key concepts are delegation of authority, checks and balances, professional decision-making, accountability, transparency, and conflict of interest. In any company, the origin of authority is ownership. However, there are companies in which the main shareholder is no longer able to fulfill the roles of shareholder, lead director, and manager. In this case, it becomes necessary to reflect on the most effective way to delegate authority from the owner to the board and the management. In fact, in an organization, the manager has several responsibilities and work to do. So, in order to reduce his burden, certain responsibility and authority are delegated to the lower level. The delegation of authority is therefore an organizational process wherein the manager divides his work among the subordinates and gives them the responsibility to achieve their respective tasks. Checks and balances. Building the right checks and balances is therefore a delicate exercise for any developing company and will probably require a stepwise approach to align governance needs with the founder-owner's willingness to accept external control. A lack of appropriate checks and balances subjects the enterprise to human weakness. To minimize these risks, it's important to establish governance procedures that subject all decision-making to some kind of third-party scrutiny. A specific example of checks and balances is the lead independent director, a position created to ensure the splitting the role of leading executive management, so the figure of chief executive, from that of chairman of the board. The third key concept, very important, is professional decision-making. The collective decision-making body is the board of directors. However, directing an organization through a board is more difficult than is commonly supposed. The chairman of board of directors has the responsibility to create a group of capable individuals into an effective board team. The chairman has to find a way to reach a consensus between different views on the company and its future. During the meetings, perspective and viewpoints should be documented in the minutes, and there should be a clear formulation process of decisions. Accountability. The definition of accountability is the obligation of an individual or organization to account for its activities, accept responsibility for them, and disclose the results in a transparent way. Each level in the hierarchy defines responsibilities and powers. The accountability hierarchy begins at the bottom of the pyramid, with each superior level monitoring and supervising the level below it. Employees are accountable to managers, who themselves report into the board of directors. Finally, the board of directors is accountable to shareholders. Transparency regards compliance with rules in giving the information encouraging the respect of high standard of behavior. A certain level of transparency in the company's activities may be mandated by law and regulation, for example, publication of financial statements. However, companies may choose to voluntarily disclose more information. Greater transparency is beneficial in establishing the legitimacy of the company as a responsible enterprise in society. Another important key concept is conflict of interest. The director have a duty to promote the success of the company as a whole. They are specifically banned from directing the activities of the company in favor of themselves or particular shareholder and or stakeholders. It is director and not shareholder that is charged with directing the affairs of the company. Some examples of conflict of interest are a manager or director that has a personal interest in the adoption of a particular corporate strategy, or directors or shareholders that encourage the company to undertake activities that benefit specific shareholders. So that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.